Hi, welcome to Me in the Kitchen, where today I am making, hands down, the best cinnamon buns, or sticky buns, you may know it as that I've ever tasted. I got this recipe in the 90s from a pastry chef. We met online and started swapping recipes, and she gave me this one. I've never tasted a better bun. This is a keeper, so let's just get started. We start with 3 cups of flour goes into your mixer bowl. To that, I'm going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons or 1 packet of instant yeast, which you just add right into your flour, which is why we love it. This is 1/3 of a cup of granulated sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm using kosher salt. 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And by the way, this recipe is just below the description. And I'm just going to stir this up and put it on the machine and start adding the wet ingredients. I'm going to start with butter. All that you do is you just put this on low and just introduce the butter a little at a time. This is 4 tablespoons of butter, 1/2 stick. I cut it into small pieces, about 1/2 inch pieces. And as soon as you see that it's starting to get broken up by the mixer, you can just add the next installment. There we go. So I started with the butter because everything else is wet. And as soon as you add wet to your flour, you start to develop gluten. One thing that we're using in this recipe that is, I think, so genius, let me turn this off. This is 4 ounces or 1/2 cup, 115 grams of sour cream. You can also use Greek yogurt. And when you measure sour cream, do it in if you use a volume cup, do it in a cup measure, a dry cup measure, not a liquid measure. And that comes from the Land O'Lakes people. So Greek yogurt, sour cream, 4 ounces, and it goes. The acid in the sour cream not only gives you a tender crumb, but it gives you a bit of a sour note. Not that you taste sour, but it would break up all of the sweetness from brown sugar and the butter and so it's just a really nice little juxtaposition. This is 1 teaspoon of vanilla that goes in, and 1/4 teaspoon of lemon oil. If you don't have oil, you can use a 1/2 teaspoon of lemon extract, or you can use some lemon zest. Just 1/2 teaspoon of lemon zest ought to do it. And then the last thing to go in is milk. I'm just trying to clean my spatula off. The reason that I'm using room temp milk is because I want a slower rise for more flavor. However, you can easily just put it in your microwave for a few seconds, get it to about 110 degrees. That's perfectly fine. Choice is yours. It'll rise a little faster if you do that. So I'm going to put this on number 4 and let this move around for about 6 to 8 minutes until it's ready to go on to the next step. That was 1/2 cup of milk, by the way. So I'll see you in a few. This is ready. And here's how you tell. If you poke a little bit, you see how it springs right back up? So that's ready to move on to the next process, which is to let this fully ferment and become lighter, fluffier, just a little bigger, and you'll start to see little bubbles and lumps and bumps around the periphery of your bread, and that's how you know that you're ready to then roll it out and move on to the next step. With an enriched bread, this has sour cream, whole milk, butter. All of those things keep your yeast from rising fully. So what I'm going to do is just make this smooth, and by doing that, by kneading it just a couple of times, I'm going to be able to look at it and tell that it's fully fermented later on. So I'll give this about 45 minutes. Now, if you'll notice, I'm not using any flour whatsoever. The flour that's in here is enough, and it's such a moist dough because of the butter that you don't need anything on your counter whatsoever. So it's nice and smooth, looks beautiful. And I am putting it, again, because this bowl is already pre-greased just from having the machine knead it. So this is going in just like this. I'm just going to put a lid on it. It's a little cool in here today. It's kind of blustery outside. Perfect day for this kind of project. So I'm going to put the light on in my oven, and that will bring the temp up just a couple of degrees, enough to help this rise. I'll see you in about an hour. What I have in here is 7 tablespoons of melted butter. This is a 9x13 pan. You can also use a muffin tin for this recipe, but I like to do a batch bake, meaning that they all sort of end up shoulder to shoulder, and you do kind of a tear and share. So I'm going to try to keep that even on the bottom of the pan. And then you want 3/4 cup of brown sugar. So lightly packed, and just kind of spread that evenly. Okay, so we have the brown sugar and the butter together. This will create a glaze. Your buns go on here, you cut them and so on, we form them. They go on here, and then at the end, this all gets flipped out, and this becomes the glaze that's on top with the pecans, and it's so good. So this will caramelize in the oven. 1 1/4 teaspoons of cinnamon. Since I don't have a shaker for the cinnamon, I'm just putting it in this little sieve. You want to spread that evenly. And then this is 1 cup of whole pecans. Well, it's halves of these pecans, but you want your prettiest pieces. I'm just going to get these on here, but you can be as fussy as you like. And now back to the dough and then the filling that goes inside. I want you to look at it and just see how there's some little bumps here and there. When I push in on it, it stays down there and slowly springs back. That means that this is as high as it's going to go, so we can take this out. Now, this is the top of your dough, and I'll show you why that's important. The top of your dough goes on the work surface. This part is a little stickier than the top is, so the top always stays the top. The bottom of the dough is what will stick to itself the best. So this is the side that you put things into, and that's true of all breads. I got a little cinnamon on there, that's okay. I'm going to roll this out to, 10 by 10 square. I'm going 10 by 10, but as you roll your filling up, it actually will grow. I'll just kind of square that off just by tugging on it. Now, this is where you can get creative. I'll tell you what I'm going to use for the filling. But if you want, you could use, if you love pumpkin spice, put that in here. If you love chai spices, put that in here. Everything is ready here. I have 3 tablespoons of butter that I've melted. Any leftover butter, by the way, can go right into the glaze. So this is the cinnamon sugar filling. And I do have some leftovers. This is 1 cup of brown sugar. I know it sounds like a lot, but you have to kind of pack this on here, spread it out, and I'm leaving a border, not much of one. I would say it's not even a 1/2 inch in some places. I want the ends to have the sugar and the filling right up against it, and then I'm doing about a 1/2 inch border up and down. This is 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm using a Vietnamese cinnamon for this today, and I'm telling you, it is so fragrant. Any cinnamon that you have will work, but if you want a treat, go Vietnamese. Okay, and then this is 1/2 cup of pecans, which I've chopped fine. And that just goes into this. Spread it evenly. I'm just going to lightly press everything in. And now you just start rolling it. What you do is you just kind of roll and pinch, pull back a little bit, and that's your first roll. And then from there it is easier. And then at the end, you just pinch this seam. Pull this flap over and pinch. Try to keep the ends straight, but if you don't, really not a big deal. So you can cut this with a serrated knife. Rather than using a knife at all, I use dental floss. And I'll show you why. It gives you a nice clean cut. So I'm just going to take these little ends off. The middle part of this is thick, and then it kind of tapers out. So I'm just kind of wiggling this to make sure that everyone's going to get an even, oh, that feels good. Everything's going to sort of evenly distribute in here. And now you measure it. We went from 10 inches to 15, actually 16 inches. So I'm just going to mark it at 8 inches, and then at 4, at 12, and then within these, I'm just going to eyeball it, but I need 3 cuts from each of these to get 12. So here I have my 12 cinnamon buns, and then I have these 2 end pieces. And what I'm going to do is take one of them and put them underneath, I think, this little guy. Because there is some filling in there, and that's a tiny little piece. And maybe I'll do this one too. So on the bottom, these little pieces can go there, and they'll sort of grow into these other rolls. That way you won't waste anything. These are going to take 30 to 40 minutes before they start to look swollen, and also they're going to rise even more when we put them in the oven. So you don't want to put them shoulder to shoulder right now. Give them a little bit of room to grow around each one. I promise you they will be perfect by the time they come out of the oven. I'll leave this for 30 minutes to take a look at them. In the meantime, I'm going to heat my oven to 350. And of course, this has to be covered. Ta-da! I'll see you in 30. When I have overnight guests, I will make this in the evening, park it in the fridge overnight, and wrap it, of course. Take it out for about a half hour or so. It can stay chilly, but you don't want it ice cold. Then I just take, either way, whether I left it in the fridge or not, just a little butter, just a little bit more, just to dab over each one of these. You can melt your butter, of course. And these will go in and bake for about 45 minutes. The only cue that you get that these are ready and risen, I just dented it there, and it's just slightly moving, coming back up. So that means that these have proved. Now, they'll rise some more when they're in the oven. 350 in about 40 minutes. I would say these will take between 35 and 45 minutes depending on your oven. So I'll see you when they're done. These are beautiful and they smell so good. This is still bubbling. You can see the little bubbles in between, and that is that little caramel that we made. So you have to flip these right away. Be very careful. I'm putting them onto a silpat. Drum roll and flip. Well, I still have some caramel in here, but as you can see, this is nice and gooey. Unfortunately, like with any bread, it's still baking right now, and so you have to let this sit. You have to let it sit and cool somewhat. 20 minutes ought to do it. It took 35, by the way, in my oven. I had the fan on, and they're beautifully golden brown. That's really what you look for. One other thing I want to show you, and this is really just gilding the lily. 1 cup of confectionery sugar. I have half a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm going to add, because they're sweet, 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 I'm going to add just a pinch of salt to that. And then we're going to make an icing drizzle, or you might call it a mock fondant. And I put in about a tablespoon of water. It's amazing how this changes so quickly. So I'm not going to put all the water in now, but you could go 2 to 4 tablespoons until you get to a thickness that you like. I'm going to need more. So I've been stirring and stirring, and this part is really up to you. How thick do you like this to be? So let's bring these back. It's time, and I've been looking at this thinking, which one do I want? They're so delicious. So let's look at this first. Here is this very tender interior. It just tears apart so easily. And that's from the acids in the sour cream. I'm telling you, this is delicious. well in the background, there's that lemon flavor that we put in, and it's nice because it kind of breaks up all of the sweetness and gives you a little burst of freshness. This is truly a fabulous keeper recipe for your cinnamon buns, and I hope that you try this. Thank you again for watching. Bye, guys.